So I'm going to invite our panelists up to the stage one at a time. Again, we have 3 EdTerps, so I'm really, really excited to have this conversation with them. First, we have Delegate Eric Ebersole. He is a University of Maryland alum 2 times, from what I understand, and he is the state delegate for Maryland Legislative District 44A in Southwest Baltimore County. Did I hear a whoop whoop out there somewhere? All right. He currently serves on the Ways and Means Committee, and he is on the Joint Committee on Children, Youth, and Families. He instructed and mentored thousands of students during his 35 years as a mathematics teacher in Howard County. He has been honored to receive numerous awards, including the Senior Class Teacher of the Year at Wild Lake High School and the Outstanding Mathematics Teacher of the Year Award from the Maryland Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Next, another alum, another EdTerp, Dr. Monifa McKnight. I'd like to invite you to the stage. Our superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools. Dr. McKnight was appointed superintendent for Montgomery County Public Schools in 2022. She also served as the Chief School Management and Instructional Leadership Officer for Howard County Public Schools. In 2016, she was a Campus Principal Ambassador Fellow for the U.S. Department of Education under the leadership of Secretary of Education John King. McKnight was honored as the 2015 Maryland Middle School Principal of the Year by the Maryland Association of Secondary School Principals, and as the 2015 Maryland State Principal of the Year by the National Association of Secondary School Principals. McKnight's prior roles in education include classroom teacher, English resource teacher, staff development teacher, and assistant principal. So we can't have this conversation without one of our amazing students, so I'd like to invite Bryant Rivera Cortez to the stage. So Bryant is a future educator who hopes to bring more care, warmth, and empathy into middle school STEM classrooms. Rivera Cortez is an undergraduate sophomore majoring in middle school math and science education and minoring in disability studies. This proud first-generation student serves as a senator in the College of Education Senate, co-president of the Association for Aspiring Educators of Color, a member of the Undergraduate Student Assembly, and ambassador for the College of Education. And he is an awesome gymnast. I got to see him in Gymkhana this weekend. He's really, really talented. He is also part of the Design Cultures and Creativity Living and Learning program, where he's currently working on his capstone centered around telling the stories of the queer Latinx community through podcasting to create an accessible home and virtual safe space. Please welcome our panelists. Right, so I would love to get your thoughts on what we just heard, but I'm going to start with a question, since all of you have experiences in the classroom. Sometimes it's helpful to connect to these conversations through what drew us to the classroom to begin with. So would each of you mind sharing what your favorite thing is about teaching?
Oh, yep. Here I am.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. It's so great to be here, and I am so inspired by all of the great talks that we heard earlier today. Mm-hmm. It just led me back to the very question of, why are we here and why is it so important, mm-hmm. and what we enjoy about education. And I'll just begin by saying, for me, one of the things that I would say I admire most is that when you are teaching and building a relationship with a student, at the same time that you're sharing information and sharing knowledge and facilitating learning, the most powerful tool that we're using during that time is that we're able to build confidence in our students through that process. Mm. And I found over time that when we spend time building confidence in students, or we build confident individuals, then we have students who are willing to take risks, students who are willing to go beyond just what's in front of them, and feel that they're in a supportive environment that allows them to do that. And so that's what I find most rewarding about the process of being engaged with young people and teaching them. And then, of course, as a superintendent, I'm coming up on one of my most favorite times of the year, which is graduation.
Listen.
They spend all of those years building relationships with teachers and learning information and thinking about all the things that have prepared them for the next stage in life. And to see them walk across that stage feeling so accomplished and taking all of those opportunities of building that confidence over the years to go into the next phase of life, it's just absolutely rewarding. I said, it doesn't matter how many graduations I'll attend, my eyes really get filled with tears every time, every single time I walk through, because you just become overwhelmed by just the happiness and the excitement for those students and their families. And so, needless to say, I'm looking forward to the next few weeks to begin to join in that celebration for students and their families.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
I can go next. So for me, I think it's always been the moments that students start to love themselves. And really when they start to learn about their identity, I think as an openly queer teacher of color, I've gotten those special moments of perhaps it's just through talking Spanish in the classroom or having a bilingual instruction, because that just comes out naturally of having the kids just take the moment and saying, oh, it's okay to speak Spanish. Of course it's okay to speak Spanish. It's a skill. It's something that should be celebrated. And it doesn't even have to be aspects of identity. It can just be the things that you love to do, whether it's be running around outside or playing with Barbies when it's not the right gender for you. Having those moments where students know that it's okay to be themselves and really start to accept themselves is my favorite time, anytime I teach.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Delegate Ebersole.
So I will say that I take something from my students. I give too, and we can talk about all those things, but I would come home from school every day energized, because as long as I've taught, people have said, kids today, they're not as good as they were before. I don't agree with that. I think we hold them to different standards, and they have different standards to meet. But I came home every day from school hopeful about the future, always hopeful, because there are so many very good, strong students. And that quote by Mr. Shonkoff, Dr. Shonkoff at the end that Christy presented about how these are the adults that are coming to take care of us later. When I saw them, when I knew who they were and I saw their potential, whether they be the best and brightest and most on-task student or the one who needed a lot of help, I was always hopeful about the future. And from teaching, I drew a great deal of energy. The students, and I use this term, and it's not meant to denigrate, they had a mature naivete about them in high school. They were growing, but they were also, that naivete was not a bad naivete, it was a hopefulness. It was a willingness to take things on, and I was always hopeful. A lot of that has come true. Students have come back to me over the years and told me what they're doing, but we're still educating students right now. We're still educating the future.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I thought about my own teaching experiences and each of the things that you shared, and I think there's this moment where you see light and wonder in students' eyes, and each of you kind of touched on that in your own way. That it's so beautiful. So thinking about the talks we all just got to witness, so I'm gonna put my Oprah hat on. So Oprah always asks about the aha moment, right? Like, what was an aha moment that you had during one or more of the talks that we heard this evening? What is something that you heard that you were just like, yes, I have been thinking about just that for a while, and they kind of put it into words?
Well, I was going to start, the very first speech was about the need for diversity in our teaching profession, and we work very hard on that in the legislature. We have a teacher shortage act that we passed, and a good deal of that focuses with attracting a broader diversity of teachers to the teaching profession. But actually, as we moved on and we started talking about AI and started thinking about virtual education, and even the challenges surrounding race, I started thinking that we as the education for teachers community need to begin to predict what's coming in the future. In other words, are we training teachers how to teach AI at this point? Really, we're probably not yet. We're not teaching them how to integrate it. It's going to be part of our society, and we can close our eyes or we can begin to embrace what's coming. We found ourselves pretty much caught unawares or what to do when we had to close schools and students had to be educated virtually. And now we have placed into our requirements that schools like University of Maryland begin to train teachers. Part of that training will involve being ready for virtual education. So what hit me is we have to try to be predictive. I don't know if we can be, but we have to be, if we can, about what the challenges and what the opportunities are that teachers are going to see in the next 10 or 20 years, and begin to address those now if we can.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's so hard to see into the future.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's a big challenge because you cannot always tell what is around the corner. But if we have any inkling, we need to embrace those changes and figure out how they can be used educationally.
Absolutely, absolutely. You looked like you were ready to share something.
Yes, I was just connecting to what our delegate here just said. And it's so true. Trying to predict the future in education means that we have to be willing to break many century-old traditions that have existed in a space of safety and in a space of familiarity. And that means that many people have to be willing to embrace that and create it. And so we know that it's much easier to continue to do something that already exists, and there's a space for it, than to create something that does not exist. It's a very scary space for people. And so when we think about education, and in every talk that we heard this evening, I heard innovation, and I heard differentiation. I heard different ways to approach old problems. And walking away from tonight, I'm just taking away from each talk that there has to be a willingness to create. Now, the pandemic actually pushed us in a lot of ways to actually do that. The question that I have is, how willing are we going to be to actually stay committed to that? Mm-hmm. And when I say stay committed to it, I mean in a number of different ways. When we think about coaches, for teachers, like we know coaches are really important, but how have we made coaching to be one that is inclusive of all of the things that we know are important to their student experience? So that means literacy. So that means not having biases in how we interact with them. That means making sure that we understand exactly what their needs are so that we can be very intentional about addressing those skills specifically. And that's a lot of things. Right? And so how do we build the capacity of the coaches to be able to support our teachers in developing all of those skills, because every single one of those skills are going to be needed in the classroom and working with students and their needs. I also think about, of course, budget and funding of school systems is a big piece on my mind right now. Mm-hmm. I know that's much of the time that I spend in my days having conversations with people, helping them to understand that. And for me, I think it's pretty simple. We are creating very different ways for students to learn. Before the pandemic, we didn't have virtual academies. Should we have virtual academies? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. They help solve all types of problems. Students who are struggling with, do I work, or do I take my classes, or do I have more flexibility in how I complete my classes so that I can graduate? Yes, Virtual Academy addresses that. For all of the conversations that we've had around programs that are unique and small and only avail themselves to certain populations of students because of capacity and size and brick and mortar spaces, do virtual spaces allow us to be able to have more flexibility with that? It absolutely does. So when we think about a traditional school system and all the things that you take into consideration with funding and all of the new wonderful things that we've built, and we're not done building. As a result of COVID-19, are we still going to fund those initiatives in the same way that we have for the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Mm-hmm. Not if we're looking for something new and better and different. And so that means there has to be understanding and commitment and conversations and building together of a community to do that. And the talks tonight, I think, were just amazing in terms of elevating those areas that we have to continue to build on and continue to advocate that has to be a part of the infrastructure of education that, quite frankly, we've just missed for a long time.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Bryant?
Yep. I agree with both of your points. For me, it was very much in concept, like encompassed by the fact of having trust in the future, and trust that we need to change the system into something that has, quote unquote, worked, if we're being honest, worked for certain people, but not everyone. So really trusting as we make changes that we will change together and move forward together, not just historically one group. For me, why trust has always kind of just been an important concept of thinking my own education pathway of oftentimes schools and education systems have been used to oppress people of color, have been used to marginalize people who've already been marginalized. So really trusting to not only put your kids in this system, but also trusting that we are working to change it. And that change is scary, but it is something that we have to trust.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I want to transition us a little bit to thinking about moving forward and how we start to implement some of the ideas that were shared tonight. So there's so much excitement in our state right now about the blueprint for Maryland's future, right? Delegate Ebersole, I know you're thinking about that a lot, right? And
You see that big smile?
yeah, and Dr. McKnight, I know you're thinking about it a lot too. Is there anything that you heard tonight that will help you implement the blueprint as effectively as possible from your perspectives, or things that we should be thinking about, key takeaways that we really need to think about this as we move into implementing this key legislation?
Sure, I'll start. So the blueprint is designed from different pillars, and the pillar that comes to mind after listening to the talks tonight is Pillar 2, and it focuses on being able to have a diverse and quality teachers and leaders. And tonight, the conversation was so much focused on all the things that we have to take into consideration and how we achieve that. I am really excited about the blueprint. That's the North Star to improve public education in the state of Maryland. And to have the opportunity to really look at how the blueprint is designed to create more opportunities for students to graduate to be college and career ready is just something that we all should be very excited about. It provides an opportunity for us to build partnerships with higher education institutions of learning, which is exactly what we're doing. And so as we think about how do we continue to create quality and diverse teachers and leaders, everything that we talked about tonight, from building the capacity of those who are in the profession to be able to retain and keep them in the profession, to being able to recruit students who are in our schools right now so that they can actually have implicit permission to say it's fine for me to be an educator, and that is a qualified, respected profession that needs my strength and my commitment. Those are the things that I believe tonight has challenged us to continue to think about in terms of what will be all of our responsibility to contribute to creating more quality and a diverse workforce of teachers and leaders. And I know when you think about the diversity that exists in our students across the state of Maryland, and I know for me in Montgomery County, when I think about the students who are sitting in our schools, I say, well, you know what? That's where all of our teachers and leaders are. They're sitting in the seats in our classrooms. That's it. That's our population. They represent the diversity that we need to continue to feed through our school system. And so I believe continuing to respect and honor those who are in the profession, to model that for our students, is a great starting place, and for those who are there to continue to build their capacity, and thinking about how do we value that diversity by really creating ways in which when we hire a diverse workforce, when they come into our schools and into our school system, how do we still help them feel respected and get the support to be successful in what they do so that they can remain?
Absolutely. We can't have a revolving door. Can't have a revolving door. Absolutely.
So the blueprint. Well, do you have until 9 o'clock tonight? I was privileged to be one of the people who helped to work on some parts of that. And I want to say that some would say we were sort of penultimate on the concepts behind the blueprint, with Massachusetts and Singapore leading the way and giving us ideas. But I would say we're on the vanguard now, because we took those ideas and we actually massaged them and improved them significantly. Maryland is out in front on this, and we're taking a huge gamble, but not really, because we know where it's going to lead. Some people want to see immediate results, and I heard it referred to this evening in one of the speeches. I wish I could remember exactly which one it was, and I have a lot of notes, as you can see, that it takes time. I think about investments in something simple like public transportation. At first, it doesn't seem like a great investment until people buy into it. This is taking time. The blueprint is a long-range plan. And we're working very hard on it. But among those are things that we recognize clearly. The first speech tonight was very much about creating a diverse teacher workforce. But there were lots of other things we've looked at. We've looked at early childhood education, and we heard about the relevance of making sure children are educated early and educated thoroughly and educated well. And the blueprint finds ways to do it. And I have to say that it was disappointing to hear it at first characterized as a tax bill that was going to cost everybody umpteen $1,000 a year. Well, first of all, that hasn't been true. We're very creative in the legislature. We found ways to fund it that did not cause any need for additional taxes, and we're spent out on it for a good 5 or 6 years right now, and we know where we're going with that. But we're ready for this investment, and the concept that we are sprinkling money on education without any sort of direction for it is misled. We are directing it toward creating, and we are always improving it. This year, Governor Moore had us introduce the Teacher Shortage Act, and one of those things was designed to impact keeping teachers in the classroom, to increasing the diversity of our teacher workforce, and also to just make sure that we're focusing on communities where there's high concentrations of poverty, which often follows racial lines, but not absolutely. But these are the communities that most need our help. This money is being injected, not sprinkled into education.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. We completely do need a plan. I actually want to add on not just valuing teachers and supporting, but really showing that love and celebrating, because people are already doing amazing work out there. And as you said, they should be a model, not something that needs to be stepped on or kind of just used, but very much appreciated on what the work people are already doing. So definitely keeping that in mind, that we do not need to completely change everything, because people are already doing great work out there. So making sure that we keep them in mind of what they're doing and how do we continue to not only support them, but celebrate them, because it is something that should be celebrated, because it is something not common. It is the new, it is what is considered different, but it shouldn't be the different, it's what should be normal.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you all for your insights, and I couldn't be more excited about the blueprint. We are ready to do this work in partnership with our partners in schools and the partners in the state. You know, we have a room here of future Terrapin EdTalkers, right? I see y'all out here, and researchers and students and future teachers and future leaders. I would love your insights into what you see as the grandest challenge in education that we need to be tackling as a community. What do we need to be thinking about as a college of education? Where should we be directing our resources and directing our thinking? And I know there's a multitude, but just choose one for us today.
I always let the student go first this time.
Yeah, Bryant.
My mind always goes towards really bringing more humanity, love, care, and warmth into a system that has been mechanical for so long, because for the longest time, as I've mentioned, we've had this idea that this system is working. It's not working. It's working for a particular group. So how do we really make this system work for everyone? Because at the end of the day, it's not going to be one teacher. It's not going to be a group of teachers that all teach exactly the same, because in reality, that's not what human is. Human is really celebrating those differences and having people that celebrate and completely just embrace those differences to help you become the best version of yourself. So how do we really take a problem that seems so mechanical and really just inject it with humanity?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you.
I think that one of the greatest challenges we're meeting in education is what I consider to be sometimes intentional, but at least systematic attempt to devalue public education across the country. Sorry. Yeah. You're applauding because it's right, but it's bad news. What's happening is something that teachers have clamored for forever, to be trusted and valued in what their decision-making is in the classroom and how they decide what sort of topics need to be addressed and in what way, based on their interactions with students and understanding what their students' needs are. What's happening across the country is Teachers are being directed exactly what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say. They're not being trusted, and they're also being told they don't have a great deal of value. We had a long speech about Prince George's County schools and how they're not entirely valued by the Prince George's County community. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And what we need to do is we need to lift up school systems like Prince George's County that are not really necessarily subpar, but are perceived as being such. And so we need to make sure that people are not able to feed into that self-fulfilling prophecy and tear down public schools in a way that you think if you're going to the public school, you're accepting a less than positive education. I had a friend who was a very good Democrat like myself, who wanted to send her children to the Park School in Baltimore County, which is a private school. She said to me, do you think my kids should go to Park School, or should they just go to public school here? And I said, my opinion is, do you want me to answer your social responsibility to send your kids to public school and make them part of the public school equation, or do you want me to answer personally? And that was the end of the answer. She knew exactly where I was going. I think we need to individually and as a community support our public schools, get behind our public schools, and value them, and value the people that are working in them. Once other people see that those people are valued, we will attract more and more people to the profession. Blueprint's doing some of that, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Well, they both have said it, a student and delegate. I agree with everything that has been said. I'll just emphasize the importance of encouraging our young people to go into the profession of teaching. We have to give them permission to do that, and we give them permission and support their thoughts in going into teaching by doing exactly everything that was just described here. And that means, yes, we give them the implicit permission to go and be educators and celebrate the fact that it's a respected profession, but we also have to give them the social capital and the economic wherewithal, right, to be able to thrive in that profession. And that is a responsibility of ours. I think about, we were looking at some research recently and was just reflecting on in 2008, 2009, and then in 2018 and 2019, we saw a decline of 1/3 of students going into teacher education programs actually completing them. We have got to be able to recruit, and the recruiting does not start when they leave high school. The recruiting starts when they're going through and getting their education and building those fruitful relationships with the staff to be able to say, this is something I desire to do, and being able to see their teachers not struggle to be able to live by the salary that they make, but seeing them being able to thrive, just as they do in other professions. And so that means our students have to hear our teachers say, wow, I really am paid well. I'm respected in what I do. And that encourages them to then want to go into the profession. And I think we must do this. It is not an option for us to be able to fulfill the promise to our students that we will have a qualified teacher in every classroom to meet their needs. That's a promise that we have to fulfill. And in order for us to fulfill that promise, we really have to take this into deep consideration and put it into action to be able to respect the profession and encourage our students and our society as a whole to celebrate educators in a very difficult way. People often say, what's the biggest problem in public education? That is the problem. We have to be able to have the staff to have a thriving public education system. So that is the state of education when we do not have that. And then we're left with, what are we going to do about it? And how is that everyone's responsibility?
I know I'm out of turn, but
Go right ahead.
you mentioned that having teacher education candidates be completers, finish. And one of the big gaps in teacher education is that teacher candidates teach in their senior year, and they pay full tuition, and they hold down a full-time job, and the universities discourage them from having other jobs while they're in. And we actually passed some legislation this year that began a system of offering a stipend to teacher interns. It hasn't been fulfilled completely. We need to help them get through the program if we possibly can. And then part of the Teacher Shortage Act also is going to increase the ability for loan forgiveness for students who have incurred debt in becoming a teacher. Because you barely make enough money to pay off your loan, much less stay alive when you're a teacher. So we're working on looking very concretely at ways of keeping teachers in the profession or moving toward the profession financially.
Listen, y'all, I didn't expect to be doubly inspired tonight, but we are so, so lucky to have all of you as members of our EdTerps community. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, starting our process of responding back to our talks. I couldn't be more grateful for all of you and your willingness to participate tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh,
Thank you all.
thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
It was brilliant.